Hello, everyone. This is Professor Chris Decker at University of Nebraska Omaha's School of Business, um, offering a follow-up video to a video I put together not too long ago on the state of Nebraska's and Omaha's employment situation, wherein I talked about my projections for where I think jobs are going in the next few months and over the next couple of years. As part of that effort, I've undertaken the challenge of trying to get a handle on weekly claims for unemployment. This data comes out, as the name implies, at a weekly frequency and often gives us some clues as to what's likely to happen to some of the monthly data that we'll eventually see coming through for both the state and the city of Omaha. Typical disclaimer, I do want to say that this is my project and I've been undertaking this effort on my own, and my projections and my analysis by my projections aren't necessarily any official statement from the university system, from anyone in state government. This is just an assessment that I've done out of my own curiosity more than anything else, because I too, like many of you out there, are wondering when we're going to see some light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to our economy. Um, so, new claims for unemployment insurance is the primary focus here, and it really does help answer this question: when will we start seeing some jobs return to our economy? Typically, jobs data comes out at a monthly frequency from the Bureau of Labor Statistics or from the Nebraska Department of Labor. The weekly data that's recorded by both the BLS and the Nebraska Department of Labor on new claims for unemployment compensation turns out to be a very good leading indicator. It gives us a very good idea of what's likely going to be happening once we start seeing the monthly jobs numbers come through from various governmental agencies. So it's very useful for us to look at. So my goal with this particular project is to take those claims data, those weekly claims data, and try to provide a simple, reliable, tractable forecast for new unemployment claims for Nebraska and eventually for Omaha. I still need a little more data on the Omaha MSA, but I've got a fair amount for Nebraska. And actually, I've used some of my own forecasts for claims to guide my forecast for Nebraska jobs that I discussed in a previous video. So I really want something simple and reliable so that it's easily understood and reasonably accurate and tractable. Every forecast is going to need to be updated and improved upon, and the simpler the model, the more tractable the model, the easier it's going to be to do that. And again, it's a great leading indicator, and it's something that's very useful. At least I found it very useful in coming up with a jobs forecast for both the state of Nebraska and for the city of Omaha. I find it to be a useful indicator indeed. Just to give you a quick recap, if you had a chance to view my previous video on the Nebraska employment situation, what I had been seeing coming through in the data, both the weekly claims data and the monthly jobs data historically, was something that led me to this kind of forecast. What I'm looking at here, based on where we are in the COVID-19 outbreak, likely going to see some pretty painful employment numbers coming through for April and May and probably June here in the state and here in the Omaha area. If things go well, if we're able to control the contagion, if we're able to maintain social distancing and give consumers confidence they won't get sick if they go out and shop, and give businesses an opportunity to have some confidence that rehiring people, bringing people back from furlough, for example, then my suspicion is we could start seeing some employment numbers record some positive gains by the end of the summer. I'm currently thinking August is a good bet to start seeing some jobs coming back. Maybe into September, but certainly August and September seem like reasonable bets the way I see things right now, and probably getting back to pre-COVID-19 employment levels by this time next year, maybe 14 months or so. If all goes as planned. Sometimes it takes a while for the labor market to work through some of these some of these downturns. So that's where I was in terms of my monthly forecast. Now, again, this may be a reasonably positive forecast to rest your hats on. There could be any number of things which could derail a recovery. I talked about that in my previous video, but I'm treating this right now, sitting here in the middle of May, as my baseline forecast. Behind this forecast are some analysis and projections of those weekly claims for unemployment compensation. And what I wanted to share with you was just a depiction of how this data tended to look historically. The figure here on the left shows us how this series has behaved since about the year 2000, right up till about February of 2020. You can kind of see that big cycle. We saw that big uptick here in 2008, 2009. That was the Great Recession, and where we had seen peak values on a seasonally adjusted basis of a little over 3,000 claims. That was considered very, very bad. And as we had this recovery go on through most of the 2010s, we saw those claims fall and then kind of leveling off here around 2016 or so. Then COVID-19 ultimately hit, and this kind of gives you an idea of what we've been tracking lately. And we've seen incredible spikes in unemployment compensation claims, largely because people were being furloughed, businesses were being shut down to try to control this contagion. The average number of claims between March and May was about 15,000 or so, compared with the average number of claims between 2000 and 2019 of about 1,430. We saw a peak here around 25,000. Never seen anything like that in the history of the series at all. And it really does dwarf what happened here in the Great Recession. But it's this series that I'm trying to get a handle on. So what I'm doing here is trying to track the time series properties of the pre-COVID-19 data, and then add into that the COVID-19 data to come up with a projection of where those claims are likely to go over the remainder of this year and into 2021. So the approach I've taken here is to say, let's treat COVID-19 as a shock. It's like a classic economic shock to our economy, and it's showing up in the data. And then we investigate the model's pre-COVID-19 time series properties to come up with a means of modeling, forecasting those claims. And it's a dynamic model in the sense that today's claims forecast will be a function of or dependent on lagged values of claims data. So once I have that model in place, again, it's a relatively simple model to construct and to track. We'll add the COVID-19 period into the data set, and then we will start forecasting based on the very last week's worth of data. So we've got all this historical data built into our model, so the behavior of our model will depend on some of the historical patterns in the claims data, and then we'll bring that forward as we ask the question, what's going to happen through the remainder of May into June and July and so forth. So that hopefully gives you an idea of the plan. Now, I started this effort about a month ago to try to get a track on the monthly employment data as I started looking at the weekly employment model and projections about a month ago. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about what the model that I put together had been predicting, what actually came through in terms of weekly claims data from the Nebraska Department of Labor. And this slide should give you some idea of how well the model's doing and where I think the next couple of weeks are going to go anyway. So beginning back early to mid April, I've been tracking some of these claims data. You can kind of see where when we started my forecast right around the end of April, My forecast for the last week of April was about 8,500 or so claims. We came in at about 8,000. See, this is the silver lining in a very dark cloud. You can see how those very large employment claims figures are starting to come down, and they're starting to come down pretty quickly. That's very good news for our economy, certainly in the short term. First week of May, my projection was about 68.76. We came in at about 63.50. Second week or so in May, my forecast was about 66.85. We came in at 63.13. The last claims data that we had coming through yesterday, they usually come out on Thursdays, for the most recent week, my forecast was about 59.70, and the state recorded 58.36 in terms of initial claims for unemployment, which was very good, actually. My model seemed to perform very well. I was very happy and to be honest with you, as a true forecaster, a bit surprised that I came in pretty close to the most recent data that's available. I have that data highlighted at 58.36 rather, because that could get revised. I don't think it'll get revised too much, but it could get revised up or down. Based on that, I do think my model's performing reasonably well. If anything, I'm over predicting something a little more negative than the actual data is suggesting. In the next few weeks, I want to kind of revisit my specification of my model and see if I can improve that. Where things are likely to go for the rest of May and into early June. Right now, I'm thinking we're going to be at about 5,600 or so new claims for the last week of May, and maybe down to about 5,200 for the first week in June. We could give or take about 100 or 150 on any one of those estimates. So I still think, though, that the trajectory is downward, and I still think that we're in good shape as we have this phased reopening going on. All of that tends to support my forecast for jobs is kind of coming back here, hopefully by the end of the summer. We should see some recovery if my projections here for Nebraska claims holds up. To give you an idea what the longer term kind of looks like here, these figures are just trying to give you an idea of where things are likely going to go if my model holds up and if the historical trends hold up in terms of offering good predictions for future initial claims for unemployment. Through the end of the year, my model is suggesting we'll be down to about 2,100 claims or so. Now, that's still above the long-term average of about 1,500 claims that I referenced earlier. So again, that suggests that while I think we're going to have some job recovery going on in the latter half of 2020, I don't think we're going to be back to pre-COVID-19 levels by the end of this year. Claims, I think, are still going to be historically on the high side, though nowhere near where we were this past spring. And as I project out through to a year from now, or perhaps through the summer of 2021, we'll ultimately get down to about 1,700, 1,600 claims if my model holds up. To me, that does suggest that we'll be back to a reasonable job picture, which could very well reflect pre-COVID-19 levels. Again, if we're able to maintain control of the contagion, if we're able to get good medicine to ultimately vaccinate ourselves against this thing, that could even improve these numbers even further going forward. So again, this is kind of the machinery that's behind my employment forecast to give you an idea why I think the cycle's currently going to look the way that it does. Now, as we get more data coming in, I'm going to track my model, I'm going to track the forecasts and see where things are going as more data comes in. So again, just to kind of give you an idea, every model does have some qualitative assumptions behind it as well. A lot of what's behind these numbers are continued, careful, phased reopening. Again, business need to have some confidence that a shutdown is not going to happen. Consumers feel safe. So as long as we continue to practice good efforts as a community to try to keep infection rates down and keep pushing those infection rates down, businesses are going to have a lot more confidence that demand is going to hold up. They're going to be willing to bring people back from furlough and hire people again more quickly than if we're unable to control this contagion. So where am I going to next with this? Well, I want to continue to monitor some of these COVID-19 cases as we do this phased reopening. If there are any spikes in cases that are long-lasting, a lot of my forecast could be changed for the worse. So I really want to do our best to keep those cases under control as best we can as a community. I do need to get a little bit more data on the Omaha metropolitan statistical area's claims before I can do any formal analysis. Right now, Omaha's claims for unemployment compensation are about 35 to 40% of the states. That's a percentage that's actually been coming down over the last couple of weeks. But I want to see if that holds up with more data coming in. And once I have that more confidence in that dynamic, then I'll be able to produce a formal forecast for the Omaha Metro, which will feed into some updated forecasts for the Omaha employment situation going forward. So that's where I am currently with this particular project. Right now, we're moving in the right direction in terms of getting those initial claims for unemployment insurance to come down. I think that trend will continue. I think that as we go closer and closer to long-term trend, we're going to start seeing some recovery, and the job recovery could take a year to get us back to pre-COVID-19 levels. My plan is to do some updating over the next couple of weeks, so hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to produce some additional videos to provide a little bit more context. I hope you're finding these videos of some value. I find it very useful for me as an economist to do this. I think it's one of the best ways I can try to help folks out as we all try to weather these unprecedented times that we're living in. I hope that, again, you find this valuable, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to look me up on UNO's website and email me or contact me as you see fit. Thank you for your attention.